welcome to another episode of S&P. I am Sung. I am your Conferences and Engagement Manager. And as always, with me,
I am Opening Day Paul here. I'm Deputy Director for NAI. And this is the greatest holiday of the year, Opening Day for Major League Baseball. I'm so excited.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I've got such spring fever. Here in Salt Lake, I think it snowed on Monday, but the sun's out now and it is warming up and flowers are coming up and it is opening day for baseball. So this episode, Paul, why don't you tell them?
All right. So we have everyone in interpretation knows that Ted Cable has contributed so much to the field of interpretation. He's written textbooks. He's a professor at Kansas State University, and everyone knows Ted Cable, the interpreter. Not everyone knows necessarily that Ted Cable is a huge baseball fan, a lifelong fan of the Chicago White Sox. And being opening day, we have asked Ted to come in and talk a little bit about baseball and interpretation.
All right, let's bring him in.
Ted Cable, happy opening day.
Thank you.
At the time of this recording, we are 14 minutes from first pitch of the 2022 Major League Baseball season, involving another Chicago team. I see that you're wearing the Chicago White Sox. We've known each other a long time, and we talk a lot of baseball. I know you're a big White Sox fan. Across town in Chicago, they're getting the Major League Baseball season started like basically right now. So happy opening day.
Thank you. Same to you. Opening day is a real reason to celebrate. It's sort of like the swallows at Capistrano and the buzzards in Hinckley, Ohio. I mean, it's something to celebrate every spring.
Absolutely. So tell us how you share an affinity with Barack Obama for a favorite baseball team. How is it that you're a White Sox fan?
Well, it goes way back to ancient history, but on June 30th, 1962, I went to my first baseball game at the old Comiskey Park, and I remember parts of it vividly. It was early win, pitched against Jim Mudcat Grant with the Cleveland Indians, and the first Sox batter, Jim Landis, hit a single up the middle, and then the second batter, Nellie Fox, who went on to become a Hall of Famer, he got on, and then the third batter, Charlie Pawpaw Maxwell from Pawpaw, Michigan. Don't you love those nicknames, those old nicknames? Charlie Pawpaw Maxwell hit a 3-run homer, and we went on to win 7-0. And then a couple of years later, my second game was against the evil New York Yankees. We were back in the 60s, the Sox were actually good, and we were always neck and neck with the Yankees, but always just fell a little short. But we won that game 4-2, Juan Pizarro versus Whitey Ford. And but that Yankee team had Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and of course Whitey Ford and Tony Kubek playing short and Richardson playing second. So I got to see a lot of Hall of Famers in that game. So those are my first two games. And of course, I've been to hundreds of games since, and I don't have those vivid memories of all of them. But if my parents had taken me to Wrigley Field, God forbid I would have grown up to be a Cubs fan.
Oh, no.
So maybe luck of the draw there. But
so Ted, I'm relatively new to interpretation in a sense. But what I find about baseball is that everybody, like you just described, they always have this story to tell about them participating in a baseball game somewhere. And I think part of it is because you can really actually sit and talk to your friends while you're watching a baseball game. It's one of the sports that, has a little lag here and there. And of course, then there's, Fenway Franks and beer and all that good stuff. But there's always this amazing storytelling that I find that comes along with baseball. And so can you tell me, as we jump from that to how does baseball relate to interpretation?
Well, interpretation, I think, sort of globally relates to so many things outside of parks and museums, that we typically tend to pigeonhole it into places where it's practiced professionally as we know it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's all kinds of links. I think of the sixth principle of interpretation, Tilden focused on children and how important it is. And many interpreters, of course, they spend much of their career working with kids, right? And we talk about how a single day, a single event might have such an impression on a child, it could actually change their life. And that's one of the cool things about our profession is, I used to tell my students, you could change lives every day on your job, sometimes by the busload, and that's true. And that's similar to baseball, as you alluded to. And in my story of, the date, and I remembered, like I said, at least the first three batters for the White Sox and who was pitching. And that's a lifelong memory. And we as interpreters have opportunities to create lifelong memories too with children maybe that come to our program. So I mean, that's just one link. But there's so many others. We, in interpretation, we talk about making not just intellectual connections, but emotional connections, right? And I think that certainly is true in baseball. We have an emotional attachment to teams that we identify with, and it's not necessarily an intellectual one. Obviously, if it was, I wouldn't have been a lifelong White Sox fan. I'd have rooted for the Dodgers or somebody that spent money. On. And
as a Phillies fan, I feel your pain.
Right.
I didn't choose this for myself. I didn't choose it.
Right. So you see how it's, we always talk about the head versus the heart, and as interpreters, we want to touch both the head and the heart, and especially opening day. What a perfect day to talk about this emotional connection in the heart, because baseball fans all over the country are excited. They haven't lost a game yet. Nobody's lost a game yet. So we have this hope, we have this excitement. It may be irrational in the sense, but we're considering the prospects of maybe having a great year. And regardless of what all the prognosticators have said and the analytics and everything like that, the predictions, everybody on opening day, we all have this hope, and that's just because of this emotional connection that we have with our teams. And so that's something I suppose that's similar to, in interpretation, we talk about sense of place, and I think most baseball fans feel that especially with their home stadium. When you're there, it evokes memories, and there's a beauty to it. Again, that's another link to interpretation. There's an aesthetic of a baseball park, the smells, the sounds, the music, of course, the visual scene. So I mean, there's a lot of similarities between interpretation and what we do and the experiences of people at a ballpark.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Speaking of sense of place, I went to a Red Sox game by myself because I was at a conference across the river, and I had an afternoon to kill before some, welcome reception-y something. And so I just took an Uber over there, again, by myself. And I totally felt like comfortable, right? I just had my gear on, I got my hot dog, I got like 2 beers, and I'm like struggling with my seat. And then everybody's chanting the Red Sox, and it is just this incredible sense of belonging. And you're all there for the common purpose. And, which is mostly to boo the Yankees if they're playing.
Yes, that's right. We have that in common. That's good.
I know, it's great. I completely agree. And I love the correlation for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned that sense of belonging. And that's another thing. It's relationship, it's you relate to other fans, you relate to the players. You relate maybe to other friends that you go with. I mean, there's a whole social dynamic to this. One of the great joys of my adult life, maybe in the last decade or so, I think I sent a picture of this to Paul some years ago, but I grew up, of course, being a White Sox fan, and our center fielder was a guy named Ken Berry. Excuse me, talking about nicknames, his nickname was the Bandit, Ken the Bandit Berry, because he would jump over the center field wall and bring back homers, steal homers. And he won 2 Gold Gloves and was an all-star one year and stuff. So he was a good player. But anyways, he was my boyhood hero. I always wanted to play center field, and in the backyard with the wiffle ball and wiffle ball bat, we always, I pretended to be Ken Berry. And then lo and behold, just a few years ago, I discovered he lives not far from me here in Kansas, and I was able to connect with him, and now he's become a friend. I mean, a real friend. go over to his house, and he's been over to my place, and we go out and have drinks and stuff like that. And he tells me all this inside scoop on what happened in the clubhouse back in the 60s, early 70s, and explaining to me, when I was listening to the old AM radio to the games, and always wondered about things. I would ask him questions about certain things I remembered, and it's just been so great, such a rich relationship. I feel so blessed to be able to call him my friend now, when he was my boyhood hero. And isn't it cool to be a friend of your hero? And so
Yeah.
but that's all part of it. It's not just my story. I'm sure there's hundreds of stories like that of fans who get to meet their hero or somehow get to connect. So as we were saying earlier, you make connections to the game, but also to the players, but also the other fellow fans, and there is a real sense of belonging, and a sense of relationship.
Yeah, I was very pleased when when the parks, the baseball parks, began allowing the public to come do tours, right? So you can go. I've been on Fenway. I have a little vial of Fenway sand, but you can go in the clubhouse, and especially at Fenway, right? They don't have the digital scoreboard, and so you see all the numbers in the back in the little window that you have to poke your head out and and
the interpretive tour,
yeah,
like the interpretive tour of the Major League Baseball ballpark is, or even at any level, right? Because baseball exists at all these levels in all these communities, and so it's that experiencing that like behind the scenes, moment as a fan is awesome.
Yeah. I think it really does help with that connection, right?
Absolutely.
And the history of it, right? Again, if you are provided with some, the experience, and you get walked through, and there's tangible things, and you can hear it, you can see it, you can smell it, you can, you're touching the numbers of the scoreboard. There's definitely that connection, which is, obviously very interpretive forward.
Well, this is the thing that I love. Absolutely. And more, as you said, more and more parks are doing that. I was just going to say, I've been to several. I went to the Houston Stadium, and of course been to Chicago and St. Louis tours. And not only that, a lot of them now have actually museums, right, in the ballpark. Mm-hmm. And at Miami, I was at the Miami ballpark where the Marlins play, and they have actually a museum of mascots there. And at least they did when I visited. And early versions of ones and how they evolved. And so, a lot of interpretation goes on in Major League ballparks. Almost all of them now have Hall of Fames. Yeah. And, I think of, old Tilden's definition that included the statement about, interpreters use original objects. Well, that's it, that you see original objects, hold original objects, like the baseball there. And you get to see, and then, as Song was talking there about the scoreboard, going behind the scoreboard, that's revelation, right? You're revealing something that normally you wouldn't see. I mean, that's the principle number one, right? So you can. There's all sorts of. It's all totally intertwined, and a lot of, I think, good interpretation goes on at a ballpark.
Yeah. One of my favorite connections with interpretation and baseball is the whole notion of tangibles and intangibles. Mm-hmm. A lot of baseball fans, like the holy grail of the tangible is catching a foul ball at a baseball game, right? Like, and this is not the one that I caught. I do have one foul ball from a Major League Baseball game, and I can tell you, I didn't have to go look this up. It was from 1999. The Phillies were playing the San Francisco Giants at Veterans Stadium, which is now long gone. There is no more Veterans Stadium, though I do have 2 chairs from Veterans Stadium in my basement. But it was the Phillies and the Giants. Jim Poole was pitching and Marvin Bernard was batting. And I was going through it was sort of a rough patch in my life, right? Like, and I was there with my family. We had been through a rain delay in this game, and normally my family would have been long gone by this point, but in deference to me, they were like, we'll let Paul make that call. Foul ball goes way over our heads. And I was in a foot race with 4 drunk Villanova students, I remember, in the upper deck at Veterans Stadium. And I came up with the ball, right? Like, and that's the only, in all the hundreds of baseball games I've been to, that's the only foul ball I've ever gotten. And, but like, I just, it's a ball that looks just like this. It probably costs $3 to manufacture, right? Like, and I have it in a case on a shelf in my house, right? And thankfully, there was the rain delay. and then the resumption. And so there were no kids left at this game, because otherwise I would have been obligated to give the ball to a child.
Yeah, that's right.
But that connection between tangibles and intangibles is really a huge one in baseball, for sure.
Absolutely.
Because that ball connects me to that evening, that moment with my family, but also it was a ball that was thrown by a major league pitcher and hit by a major league batter, and now is in my life, still 23 years later.
Yep, I've caught a couple of home runs and a few foul balls, and I know the stories of all of them too. And I would always think the last person here, I got one here too. I have a whole room in my basement set up for White Sox stuff, and like you, Paul, I have 2 chairs from the old Comiskey Park.
It's great
too. Isn't that an interesting link? But yeah. But anyways, I would always think this the last person to have touched this was, Gary Peters or Joe Horlin or some pitcher, whoever the pitcher was at that moment. Like, wow, this was just in his hand, You get all sentimental about it. Yeah, but
well, so Ted, you've written books on interpretation. Obviously, you're a giant in the field. The most recent, Interpreting Cultural and Natural Heritage for a Better World, The Gifts of Interpretation, Interpretation for the 21st Century. But you've also written travel books: Kansas Birds, Driving Across Missouri, Driving Across Kansas, Oklahoma Birds. There's lots, literally too many to name. My question is, when's the baseball book coming? When is Ted Cable's baseball tome coming?
Oh, you know what? I would love to do that. I would love to write, especially, of course, about the White Sox. Somebody had already done a history of the White Sox, so I got sort of scooped out on that. And so when I made this friendship with Ken Berry, and he would tell me these great baseball stories. I mean, really stunning stuff that happened in the clubhouse. And there's always sort of the code of the clubhouse, right, where stuff doesn't get leaked out. And he even told me, I mean, even though this stuff happened 60 years ago or whatever, he said, now don't say anything about this, but our manager Eddie Stanky, and he would tell me some terrible stuff, but I thought, Ken, let's do a book. I would love to help. Wanted him to to help him really tell these stories or be a part of that storytelling, because I had some links to some sports publishers in Chicago, Triumph Publications. I know a guy there, and he's done all kinds of sports related books. And but Ken wants to write. Ken now writes children's books, and I've been able to correspond. We talk a lot about writing and children's books, and he's written a couple of mystery books, but he has no desire to write a baseball book. And but he has all the material, and so I don't know. I still every once in a while I'll bring it up again and say, come on, Ken, let's do that book. It would be sort of like if you're familiar with Ball 4, the book by Jim Bouton.
Oh yeah.
It was sort of a tell-all kind of thing. And I guess that left such a bad taste in the mouth of other players, because he did violate this unwritten rule of what happens in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse, that I guess he never wants to be accused of doing that, even though probably most of the characters in the book would be long dead by now. So
right. There was that Saturday Night Live sketch about Chico Escuela, and he wrote the book Bad Stuff About the Mets. It was about how he would say things like Tom Seaver borrowed his pen and didn't give it back. That sort of
thing. Hey, Ted, I'm wondering, what is your favorite piece of baseball memorabilia that you own?
Oh wow, that's oh man, that's hard. Let's see. Probably some of those really early scorecards from the early 60s, some of my first games. And there's also another reason for it. And again, it gets back to an intangible. It gets back to the notion of family. Is that on a lot of those, my father was the one that actually kept score, and he knew how to keep score. In the old days, everyone would go, they would always say, have your pencils and scorecards ready, at the beginning of the game. And most of the fans would actually be doing that, And so it's it has his handwriting and all of that in some of these old scorecards and things. So maybe that's one of the more valuable ones. But the chairs are really cool. Like Paul said, he has chairs, and you can see where they'd been repainted about 3 times because some of the paint's chipping off, but there's different colors under the original paint on them. And of course they were wooden and iron and totally uncomfortable, but but it just shows you how far stadiums have come. Since
And they were a lot smaller, I feel, too.
They were. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, they're only about, I don't know, 18 inches at the most. So I don't know.
Oh, you kind of have to
And of course,
wedge
that was
yourself
the
in
era
it.
where everybody wore white shirts and sometimes even ties and stuff to ball games. People got dressed up. The men, at least,
Yeah.
would get dressed up to go. You see the old pictures; they're all wearing fedoras and coats and ties. And yeah. Anyway,
Amazing.
yeah, those are some of the more meaningful things that I have, I guess.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for joining us in short order here. We really appreciate getting to speak to a giant in the field of interpretation about something just related to interpretation, but outside the field a little bit. We've been talking long enough now that it's the top of the first in Chicago. The Brewers and the Cubs are tied at 0. Still no base runners in the 2020.
All right, go Brewers.
But happy opening day.
Day.
Should we go around the table here real quick and predictions for who's going to take it this year? It's been since 2005 since your White Sox, Ted, since 2008 for my Phillies. Songs Red Sox are always winning the World Series. It's like every 3-4 years
they had a long drought there.
Hey, we had a long time.
Yeah.
Sure.
You booed the Yankees, but they haven't even been to the World Series. Well, they haven't won it since 2009. So I am going to predict that the Phillies don't lose any games this season and win the World Series in 4. That's my prediction.
Right, exactly. I mean, Ted, like you said, this is why we love opening day, because everybody's on this exact same playing field and we're all incredibly hopeful. Nobody's lost yet. And so, yeah, it's Red Sox all the way, period, the end, Paul.
Yeah. And of course, I think, my Sox will be there. Maybe we'll meet you guys in the playoffs. And then wouldn't it be awesome if we had a Phillies White Sox World Series?
Well, we would certainly have to revisit this group here if that happens. And, if I think Sam Hamm should be excited about his Mariners this year as well. So
So that's right.
Well, Ted, thank you so much. This has been a blast. Good luck to your White Sox. Hey, next time we get you two in the same room, we've got to talk about how Sox is the archaic pluralization of the word socks and see how that has stuck around in baseball for so long.
We can get the sock puppets as well.
The Burlington sock puppets. And we'll also have to talk about, I know Ted has a connection to the Daytona Tortugas as well. We've talked about that minor league team quite a bit. So that'll be next. But in the meantime, enjoy your helmet Sundays at ball games this year. And go Phils, go Sox, go Sox.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Play ball.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Bye. Wow. Well, that was incredible. Last time I saw Ted was about this time last year at our online international forum. So this was such a treat for me to get to hang out and talk to him a little more casual setting. What a great guy.
Yeah. Oh, so much fun. I've gotten to talk with Ted over the years about baseball, and it's just been, so much fun to, he obviously can speak extemporaneously on so many subjects, especially as it pertains to interpretation. But what a great diversion and a way to tie this thing that's so important to so many of us to this field that we love of interpretation. So that was great. Appreciate Ted coming in on fairly short order. We actually emailed him yesterday and said, Ted, it's opening day tomorrow. Come talk to us. And he said, yeah, sure. Just name the time.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
So just a couple of quick housekeeping for NAI. We've got one. InterpTech registration open, presenter lineup is posted. So definitely get in on that. We've got some amazing presenters, really cool, unique keynote presenters that are, I think they're just going to be amazing.
It's going to be so cool. We got tweeting trees.
Cool.
Yeah, so much going on in InterpTech. That's going to be really fun.
Totally. Yeah. And then we've got national conference.
Yeah, we've got some deadlines there. We got April 18th.
Oh, hold on. Call for presentations is still open. It will be open until the end of the month. So that's for pre-conference workshops as well as concurrent sessions. So get those in. You can also submit a short video, which would be awesome. That's my favorite part of reviewing submissions. And scholarship.
That deadline is April 18. So yeah, student scholarships, the professional grants will be available later on in the summer. But if you are a student, get your student scholarship application in by April 18, which is 11 days from today. And then, I think the deadline for the call for presentations that we posted was May 3rd. So get those in. interpnet.com/conference. Get there, do those things. And then Song, you and I are going to be in Cleveland next week, checking out the site for NAI 2022. So things are happening. 2022 is happening. Baseball is underway. Conferences are coming up. InterpTech is soon. So many things are happening.
It is springtime goodness.
Springtime goodness. That should be the title of this episode is Springtime Goodness.
All right. Well, hey, all you out there, hope your teams win.
Unless they're the Mets or the Braves.
Or the Yankees.
I hope Mets and Braves fans are unhappy. I want everyone to be happy. I just want your teams to lose.
Thank you for the clarification, Paul. And on that note, we will see you all in a couple of weeks.
Bye.